Hey guys, this is Albert. You can't really see me because the light's off. And then we have Gabby manning the computer for now. We're going to switch off as these slides go so that we both are being seen in this presentation. Our topic was on counseling interventions with Arab Americans, and as you're going to see, a lot of the information that we have in these slides is going to kind of debunk some of the myths that we have when it comes to Arab Americans and just in general and how we counsel a person instead of as a culture as a whole. So let's just get right into it. First off, let's talk about a discussion opportunity that we're going to have towards the end of the presentation. There's going to be a section where you're going to be able to view this video, and then what we want you to do is just kind of give your thoughts and your reactions as to what you felt, what you heard, what you saw in the video. So for those people who may or may not be able to see the clip or click on the link, we're going to play it for you right now.
It was January 1991. I grew up in Philadelphia, or right outside of Philadelphia, a small little suburb called Thomasville. It was beautiful, quaint. I was going to run for class president. I was in the second half of my 8th grade year. I was excited. My dad was very excited. He said my son would be president. I should also say that I'm an Arab. I need to say that. Slow down. I need to say that because my appearance doesn't necessarily scream it. We don't all look like the ones that seem to make the Fox News all the time. I get weird reactions actually when I tell people that I'm Arab. I have to explain it to them. They never guess Arab. Nobody ever. People know I'm a little off. You know? But they don't guess Arab, that's insulting. They say, what are you, Greek, Italian, Asian? I'm like, Asian? You guess Asian, really? I say, no, I'm Arab. They say, well, you don't look Arab. Thank you. I don't know. Sounds like a compliment. It's funny, you know, we almost come out when I tell people I'm Arab. They treat me like I just told them that I came out of the farm. Wow, you're Arab? My friend Noah is Arab. So I was going to run for class president. I plastered all the rooms in the school with my face, and I was popular. My dad was on the school board. My mom was active in the community. People knew who we were. And they knew that we were a little different. You know, I knew that we were a little different. Everybody I grew up with was white. It was a very nice white community, really nice, like Episcopalian and just like really, really nice. And we were different. My dad spoke funny. We smelled like garlic. Rice was a food group, you know. And so I was excited. And I was at basketball practice one night, and my dad picked me up. And he took me home, and my dad is usually a talker in the car. But this night he wasn't talking. He was silent. Because that was the night that America bombed Iraq, Operation Desert Storm. And he stayed silent in the car the whole ride home. And then when we got home, he sat down in front of the TV and watched the news. Now, watching the news was nothing new in our house. For those of you who don't know, for Arabs, watching the news is like a social activity. We call our friends, we make popcorn, and we watch the news because we're on it. It's like a reality show for us. You can't go more than 10 minutes without seeing something on the news about Arabs or Muslims. I was probably the only kid in the 8th grade at Garnet Valley Middle School that knew who Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, and Peter Jennings were. Because we watched the news. And as an Arab, I watched the news all the time. And we actually have a magical power. Nobody knows this much about us Arab Americans. We have a magical power. We are able to be in news stories, even when news stories have absolutely nothing to do with us. It's amazing. Like when somebody does commit a terrible crime in America, and they come out a few minutes later and they say, we can now confirm that this is not terrorism. Now, you guys might not know what that means. We Arabs, we hear the news with a little different ear than everybody else. Not terrorism means not us. That's what it means. They use different words when it's not us for the perpetrators: disturbed, deranged, delusional, and depressed. This is a new one in 2015. Depressed. A guy flew a plane into a mountain in France, killed 150 people. And CNN talked to me for 2 weeks about depression. And so I watched the news. And I have to say here, I love America. See, we have to convince people all the time that we love America. We do. We do. We do very well when we come here. We love this country. But it is hard sometimes, because we do watch the news. I was watching news a couple years ago, and an Indian American woman, she's from India, she's American. We have to say that she's American, from India. People always ask me where I'm from. I say Philly. They say, no, where are you from? I say, from. I'm from Palestine. That's where I'm actually from. That's what white people say when they want to find out where you're really from. They say, where are you from? They say to me, where, are you ethnic? I'm like, yeah, I'm from the southern part of Ethnia. You know, an Indian American girl won Miss America, and that night Twitter went crazy. They said, look, an Arab wins Miss America. Look, a Muslim wins Miss America. And the next day on CNN got up very early in the morning, and they told everybody, they said, hey, everybody, Nina was her name. Nina is Indian. She's Hindu. She's not Arab. She's not Muslim. It's okay. See, I love America, but it's hard sometimes, because I watch presidential elections, and we Arabs make very special appearances in presidential elections. In 2008, I was getting ready to vote for Barack Obama. I voted for Barack Obama twice because he's a Muslim. Anyway, so they said, watch out for Barack Obama. He has a Palestinian friend. And Barack Obama had to come out and deny that he has a Palestinian friend. And then I was watching a town hall meeting in Minnesota with John McCain, and a woman walks up to the microphone and she says, I can't trust Obama. He's an Arab. And John McCain said, no, ma'am. He's a decent family man. See, that's the world we live in. And I live in a world where I see them arrest a kid in Texas for a clock. A clock! Now, let me clear up a few things. His name was Ahmed Muhammad. That doesn't help. But he had a clock. They told him that he was trying to put together a hoax bomb. Now, it's not a hoax if you're telling everybody that it's a clock. And we can do away with Fox News telling us, well, maybe they thought he had a bomb. He didn't have a bomb, okay? They didn't think he had a bomb. When they think you have a bomb, they evacuate the school. When they think you have a bomb, they call in the bomb squad. They don't take you to the office with your bomb to talk to the principal. Okay? And I'm an Arab. I'm very familiar with bomb protocol, and that is not what they do when they think you have a bomb. So Ahmed makes me think about when I was his age and I was running for class president. I came into one of my classrooms one day where my face was plastered all over the wall, and I saw that one of them had been a bit altered. And I walked up to it, and it said, "Go home, terrorists." That's when I realized that, we're different, but we're different in a little bit different way than I thought. I took that poster, I showed it to my favorite teacher. I said, what are you going to do about this? She looked at the poster, she looked at me, and she said, there's nothing we're going to do. And that's when it hit me how different I was. Because if I was Latino, there might have been a seminar the next day. If I was black, Al Sharpton would have been in my school the next day. But I was Arab, so it was okay. So I didn't win president, all because of George Bush and Saddam Hussein. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I love America. I really do. I just wish that she would love me back.
So note the comical air that he used while he was speaking of his experiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you the one and only, the very funny, my mentor and comedian, idol.
And yet still, there were a few daggers in there about the way that he felt he was treated. And a lot of times when we counsel different ethnic groups, we have to really put ourselves in their shoes and look at their perspective, not necessarily how we view the situation, but how they view the situation. So let's just get into some of the demographics when we talk about Arab Americans. Arab Americans originate from about 22 different countries, in the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia. And according to some research, there are currently about 3.5 million Muslims in the U.S. today. Note the distinction between Muslim and Arab. Okay, so underneath that there are about 1.9 million Arab Americans. We're going to get into a little bit about the differences between Muslim and Arab in a couple of slides after this. So most of the Arab American Muslims reside in the California area. Here we go. It's a common misconception that all Arab Americans are Muslim. In fact, Arab Americans include a multitude of denominations, including different ethnic, cultural, and religious subgroups. About 35% are Christian, which include Roman Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant, and about 20% are Islamic, Shia, Sunni, Druze, and Asadi. And when we work with this population, because it's so diverse, it's essential to really differentiate between what we think the client is and what the client believes they are. So we have to delineate a client's worldview, including their individual religion and their individual culture. So when we talk about religion, Islamic religion shares pretty much the same base core beliefs. However, they differ in their faith expression as a result of their cultural, environmental, and familial influences. So when we talk about Islam, let's do a little bit of history. So 1,400 years ago, Muhammad was chosen as the last messenger from God. The angel Gabriel spoke to him, gave him a revelation, which he wrote down, and that's what we call the Quran. The Quran is known as the history of mankind, and it gives rules for living life. Some points of influence when we talk about Islam. They really do put a lot of focus on what happens in the next life. So whatever you do here is going to have some sort of implication in the life hereafter. So do good now, and you'll get good later. It's like a reward system. As well as purity and maintaining a closeness to God as they know Him. So the 5 pillars of Islam are such. Only one God, Allah. Prophets and messengers of God are to be revered. The revealed text of God, the Quran. Angels of God, and the day of judgment, resurrection. So these are things that they hold very close to them when we talk about Islamic religion. Again, so Arab Americans express their beliefs through their practices and rituals. Shadaha. With that, one declares their faith in God. There are about 5 obligatory prayers a day in which a person, it's a ritual basically in which they pray 5 separate times during the day. And so when you're counseling your clients, keep this in mind. it tells them that they should pay a percentage of their income to charity at least once a year. There's fasting and for religious holidays, and there's a pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. So here are some religious implications for counseling. Understand that the client is going to see that worldly distress, so the things that go on around them, is seen as a trial from God because they view religion as a source of strength and comfort for them. So 98% attribute life stressors to a test of one's faith. So whatever they're going through in this time, whatever they are facing, they're going to view that as a way to become closer to Allah. They also adopt the idea of fatalism. What's going to be is going to be. What will be, will be. That sort of thing. And we have a small quote here. Good mental health comes from an unblemished belief in Allah, and any deviation causes a disruption of inner harmony. So the way they view mental health is the closer you are to Allah, the better state of mind you're going to be in. But if you deviate from Allah and His teachings, then that's where discord comes in, and that's where you begin to have a lot of these mental health issues. But even in these religious practices, understand that not everybody is as devout as the next person. And so while someone may be following strictly by the Quran, there are some that do not. And so it's best to not anticipate, but to respond to a person and their religious beliefs. And again, their values are linked with life satisfaction. Increased resiliency for suicide risk, depression, and anxiety. So again, the closer they are to Allah, the better mental health capacity. We're going to talk about culture. Some of the values of the culture: self-control, dignity, respect for community, modesty, and cordiality. There is a patriarchal family structure where the males lead the family. They really do value the family as a unit, cohesion and proximity versus work and friendship. So the family being together is more important than work or friendships. Outside of the family is less important than what goes on inside of the family. Extended family enforces cultural traditions and heritage. So while the parents may be raising the children, you're going to have people like grandmothers and grandfathers who are really embedding the culture and heritage into the younger generations as they come up. And when you're counseling younger Arab Americans, it's very important that you keep this in mind, because not only are you counseling the patient, you're also counseling the family as a whole, as a structure. So not just the parents, but also the extended family as well. Let's get a little bit deeper into family and their importance. So we talked about collectivism. So there's a collectivist culture. And basically the first bullet point says filial piety. So basically what that says is one's elders are extremely respected. And if there is a deviation from that, you're going to see a lot of in-family fighting, quote unquote. We'll get into that later as well. Again, responsibility is to the family before oneself. So who you are as a person is not as important as who you are in the family and what function you serve in the family. There are structured family roles and hierarchical relationships. There's a respect for the community. And community, again, we talked about is one's family, one's extended family. And last but not least, success, quote unquote, is measured by one's ability to care for their family and community. So again, here we go. Everything deals with the family. We always go back to the family. What is their place in the family? How do they care for their family? Everything is measured by family. And so we talked about some conflicts, so let's get into some conflicts and stress. And so when we're dealing with what causes mental health problems, stress and culture can become a part of those problems. There can be triggers for those problems, and here's why. Because culture can blur the lines of faith expression. So when you deal with culture versus religion, and as we said, not everyone is as devout as the next person. When we deal with this, these times where someone may be very devout in their culture but not as devout in their religion, then that can cause problems. Culture can cause tension to develop between religion. And in that, there may become some burdens of guilt, shame, and fear, which tend to become pathological as represented as depression and anxiety. And so counselors should really assist the client in reconciling the differences between their culture and their religion. Again, one might not be as developed as the next person. There may be generational conflicts involving core values. We talked about that before, where if the younger Arab Americans are not respecting the older, there may be that generational conflict. A culture of stress. And this deals with stress reactions related to life events and experiences that occur during acculturating to mainstream culture. So when an Arab American is trying to take on the mainstream American or the predominant culture of America, then that's when you start to see a lot of the stressors become evident in their lives. So balancing between public and private self, and this is basically deals with first and second generation Arab Americans. Some may hide ethnicity when they're around their friends. And this is what we're talking about, culture of stress. So in there, trying to acculturate into predominant American culture, they have to devise this outward self and an inward self. So how do they present themselves in the public, and how do they present themselves in their families? And that, in and of itself, can become very stressful. Other forms of conflict and stress. When we talk about Arab Americans who become refugees because they're fleeing their native countries due to war. So war and traumatic stress can displace families. Families may even lose members. Relocation can become a stressor. And when we talk about war and refugees, we really have to bring into the picture PTSD, because a lot of them do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, especially if they're losing loved ones, if they're losing maybe even parts of their body due to the wars that tend to happen. And depending on how they leave their country of origin, that can really affect their ability to stabilize after they relocate. When we talk about subgroup hostilities, again, when those generational conflicts, maybe hostility between someone who's devout and someone who isn't. Maybe a child isn't as devout as their parent, and that can become a way for them to butt heads. Hate crimes. We see that a lot in the news, where sometimes Arab Americans are being falsely profiled. Microaggressions. When we talk about microaggressions, we really mean those instances where it's not as explicit that someone is being aggressive towards a certain culture, and we're talking about Arab Americans here. Prejudices and magnification of Western media. So there's an increased anxiety, stress, and depression when people tend to view Western culture a certain way, and when they get here, it's not the same way, or it's not what they thought it was going to be.
Thank you, Albert. So now we're going to talk about immigration refugee status implications. So basically, they're often suffering from community violence, political torture, loss of homes, livelihood, family, and loved ones. They typically battle with depression, anxiety, and PTSD, as we discussed. There's an immense lack of support if they have left their family behind in the other country, and especially with family being such a major component of this religion and this culture, it can have some serious implications if they are alone in this country trying to survive as a Native American. Refugees also may have trouble finding work, and we see that happening in our country right now with the refugees coming in from Syria. So similar situation there. Underutilization of services. This is a huge thing for Arab Americans and Muslim Americans. There's a lot of barriers to treatment, unfortunately, for them. They, as we spoke about, they believe that their concerns are fundamentally religious. And for somebody who's not trained in that, it's very difficult to counsel someone from a religious perspective. So it's very, very important that we not only educate ourselves and make ourselves knowledgeable about their religion and their culture, but that also we experience it. We should be going out into the realm of their culture and experiencing it for ourselves. We shouldn't just be reading it in a textbook, because it's really not going to have the same implications when we're trying to understand a culture or a religion that plays such a huge role in who they are and who they choose to become. So any issues that are presented, we should be seeing them through an Islamic lens. We should not be really veering from that. As we stated before, 98% of Muslims attribute their distresses to trials and tribulations of Allah. So we really want to make sure we're keeping that focus with them, or we're not going to have a therapeutic alliance, and they're going to deviate from anything that we're saying. Past experiences with discrimination make it difficult for clients to open up to white counselors. It is what it is. I mean, it's very, very hard for them, and we'll get into the post 9/11 aspect of this group, but a lot of them have a lot of trouble opening up to a white counselor, especially when they're viewed as what we will get into is called as a hidden terrorist. Accent and language barriers obviously are going to come with any other different group. Mistrust of service providers. These people are really almost looked down upon in our society because of the past of terrorism, and they're not really trusting of white people in general. Nonetheless, people who are supposed to know better than them or to help them, especially when they put most of their faith in religion. Also, a huge thing with confidentiality, because there are a lot of sex differences as well between males and females. There's a whole family component to it, things like that. They're really, really mistrusting of the confidentiality because it could have major implications in their marriages, in their families, in their communities, and so on. Lack of family and community support. They might be having a struggle and their husband is telling them, you should not be seeking counseling, you should be praying, et cetera, things like that. There's not really going to be a huge family or community support for seeking counseling, especially since in the community of Muslims, they are told to see imams, which are supposedly almost similar to a counselor in a religious sense. Lack of culturally accommodating services. This is things such as a lack of a place to pray if it's that time of the day where they need to pray, a lack of services watching their children, and things like that. Top concerns, reasons why Arab Americans are seeking counseling to begin with. Issues concerning immigration is going to be 48%. Like we said, that has huge implications for PTSD, anxiety, depression, family issues, relocating problems, things like that. Education and language, 42%. Community acceptance, 38%. Economic strife, 32%. Also things to consider, cultural differences, marital problems, behavioral problems, disability, mental illness. Post 9/11 era Americans. Okay, so there's this whole idea of hidden terrorists, and that's basically this idea that Arab Americans are profiled on an assumption basis. They're just looked at as terrorists without any facts of knowing who they are or anything like that. And this leads to a hypervigilance in their daily life. And that kind of goes with what Albert was saying with the personal and private self, things like that. Really, every second of every day, what I've gathered from speaking with my Muslim friends and the texts is that every day they're worried, does this person think I'm a terrorist? Does this person think me praying is an act of terrorism, or is this person... There's a lot of perceptions that are going through their head constantly, and that can lead to anxiety and depression in itself. There's a fear that their religious expression will be misinterpreted as terroristic endeavors, like I said. forced to always be on the defense of their values and religions. Like the man said in the TED Talk, this is a huge thing. They always have to be on the defense because everyone is assuming that there's a negative connotation with being an Arab. Social exclusion is related to identity and causes distress. And then there's the idea of Islamophobia, which I don't think I need to. Considerations for counseling. This is important. Remain cognizant of clients' religiosity and of their cultural identity. Like Albert was saying, we really need to be cognizant of both. We cannot neglect one or the other in understanding this person and where they're coming from. We need to help clients feel that their religious values are a part of the counseling process and solution. Another huge point. If you go into counseling without this aspect, there's no chance for this population really to do any work. You might have to go outside of your realm of comfortability or whatever and consult with actual religious leaders and organizations. Like they said, their extended family is the community, and family is the most important thing. So if you really want to have a chance, you might have to go outside of your comfort zone and meet with some of these leaders and do some advocacy in the community. Be conscious of your own perceptions and biases. This is important in counseling any population. Allow for your own education by the client. We're obviously not going to know everything, so let the client lead the way and maintain an open mindset. Do not generalize. That's the worst thing you can do. Like I was saying, you gotta really educate yourself. And I after doing my action plan, I think that firsthand experience is paramount to helping this population or any ethnic population. Be open and objective. Understand. Do not attempt to change. Always be understanding of the client and where they are coming from. Be aware of religious and culturally specific behaviors. This is important because coming from a Western society, and an individualistic society nonetheless, we might interpret their things that they may do or say as either pathological or strange or whatever it may be. Like they may show signs of dependency, indecision, nonverbal emotions, and these are not necessarily something to dwell on. It's just a cultural or religious indication. Gender of clinician and client are significant to the therapeutic relationship. As I mentioned before, there is a big distinction with men and women within the culture and the religion, so that's going to play a role, but we'll get into that in a couple slides. Clients who suffer from PTSD should be treated individually. Like we said, because this is such a familial community and it's a collectivist community and they place so much emphasis on the family, they may often end up counseling them with their family members, etc. So if they're suffering from PTSD, you really want to make sure that they're able to disclose their private and shameful issues. And honestly, that goes for any situation. You really want to try to work with the client individually unless they specify otherwise or unless there is a family issue. Provide education and support concerning mental health services. Because mental health services are so underutilized in this population, we might have to help educate not only them, but their families and their extended families of the community as well. Just so that they can understand what we're doing, understand confidentiality, and maybe be a little bit more open to the process. There's very little tolerance for confrontation here. So over-questioning can be seen as oppressive. Islam is a strength to use in counseling, like we said, huge on religion and Allah and the pillars of Islam, and the next life implications and things like that. So you can really use that as a strength. You can really use that in your counseling to get some leverage. Okay, so as I was talking about the gender relations, the considerations for counseling men are a little bit less than counseling women. It is a very patriarchal religion and culture. They think that mental illness is God's will. So physical contact for men. Interestingly, women are the ones who should decide the physical contact. So even a handshake with a male client as a female is considered improper. You want to ensure that your client is comfortable with the sex difference right off the bat, get it off the table, and that's going to go for women as well. So considerations for women in counseling. They also see mental illness as somewhat God-related, and there's like this idea of sorcery and the evil eye. A lot of the texts mention the evil eye as being the factor of mental illness. Be really cognizant of your verbal and nonverbal behaviors. Certain things like eye contact, modesty levels can be misinterpreted or seen as oppressive or etc. Handshakes with males are women's choice. So depending on whether you're a male or female counselor, you gotta figure it out. Male and female interaction is severely restricted, like I said, and the women in Islamic culture and religion have a lot of rights as far as like textbook, but they actually are often, unfortunately, not followed. And this places a lot of the women at risk of emotional, physical, psychological, sexual abuse at the hands of their husbands, men in the community, etc. Ensure your client is comfortable with sex differences, of course, again. Potential models. You want to be short-term, you want to be concrete, you want to be goal-oriented, and you want to be structured. In-depth, emotional, insight-oriented, and group therapy approaches rarely work with this population. So you want to meet the client where they are, you want to understand where they're coming from, let them lead the way. Also, some other things that we found in the text that have been used and shown to be effective are CBT, solution focused, obviously, existential, humanistic, obviously has a little spiritual component to it, and very, very, very humanistic religion. A lot of work for charity, a lot of selflessness, a lot of sacrifice. Family therapy, obviously, a huge familial component. Couples therapy for marriage relations, as that was one of the major things that they see counseling for. Feminist models, empowering the women who may feel that they are being oppressed within their religion culture or stuff like that. Paternalistic authoritative consultation is what this subgroup is looking for, rather than a collaborative partnership that we as counselors might be used to. Okay, so alternative treatments. This is something we found in the literature. There's like these new emerging fields of religious psychotherapy, and they're effective in treating anxiety, depression, and bereavement, and we see clients actually responding faster than regular treatment. Basically uses cognitive therapy, and it replaces these unproductive thoughts like cognitive therapy does, but instead of replacing them with more positive and progressive thoughts, we're going to replace them with Islamic beliefs, again, using that religion as a strength. Okay, there's also Islamic counseling. That's another thing that's coming up. It's based on the nature of being, huge spiritual component here. Counselor is almost seen as a spiritual facilitator. It addresses the mental processes of quote-unquote knowing, the awareness of purpose, trust and reliance on Allah, blessings, and this ideology that your hardships will ease as long as you continue to be a good Muslim. Spiritual interventions, these are like almost like little homework assignments that have been shown to be effective, and these are things like prayer, fasting, repentance, supplications, and recitations. It's maybe a little bit out of a counselor's comfort zone again, so this is why we say that it is important to meet with others in the community or to firsthand experience the culture itself. And references.